Thursday, March 18th. I'd like to welcome everyone to the House Oversight Committee, and I'd like to begin on time, or relatively on time. This is the House Oversight Committee. Zaire, would you take the roll, please?
Hello? Okay. Chairwoman Serpa?
Present.
Rep. Casimiro?
Present.
Rep. Norre?
Here.
Rep. Agello?
Present.
Rep. Baptista?
Present.
Rep. Carson? Rep. Chippendale?
Present.
Rep. Courtfriend?
Oh, no, you're right.
Rep. Donovan?
Present.
Rep. Edwards? Rep. Falella?
Present.
Rep. Handy? Rep. Hawkins?
Present.
Rep. Knight?
Present.
Rep. Lima? Rep. Messier?
Present.
Rep. Newberry? Rep. Place?
Present.
Rep. Slater? Rep. Solomon?
Present.
Rep. Speakman? Rep. Williams?
Okay, thank you, Zaire. Thank you, Zaire. This afternoon, we're going to get an update on the Rhode Island College strategic planning process as a result of a contract that was awarded to Alvarez and Marsal back in January, I believe. It was supposed to originally be a 6-week contract, but after 3 weeks, the contract was terminated. So we're going to get an update on the findings of that 3-week contract. But before we get to the meat and potatoes of that contract, I understand that Dr. Sanchez is on the line. And Dr. Sanchez, you have a presentation for us. Is that true? What's the matter, Beth? We're having some technical difficulties. Okay. If you wouldn't mind standing by, Dr. Sanchez, they're going to work it out for us.
Mary, can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
We can hear you. Sure. Can you hear us?
Excellent. You would think after a year of doing all this remote, we would have the technology down, but I can't hear you.
One would think.
Yeah, so we're going to have a PowerPoint come up. I have an assistant at Pacheco that's going to be supporting me. Before we get started, though, I would certainly want to thank you, Madam Chair, and all the members of the House Oversight Committee for the opportunity to share with you a little bit more about what Rhode Island College has been doing with our strategic planning process, as well as some of the tremendous successes we've had, particularly this past year. Let's see if we can't get the PowerPoint slides up.
Is the PowerPoint in here?
I'm not seeing the slides yet.
Okay. Dr. Sanchez, our tech staff is still trying to work through the slide part of it, but I believe all of the members have the compact with Rhode Islanders.
Yes.
Folks, I believe this is the one Dr. Sanchez would like to go through. So if it's helpful to you, Dr. Sanchez, we don't mind going through a hard copy. and you can begin if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. So if you just flip the page, just to give you a quick overview of what I'd like to talk about, I'll give you, many of you are familiar with Rhode Island College, just a snapshot of the college profile today. We've had a recent economic impact study I want to share with you, some modernization work we've been doing at the college as well. Talk a little bit about enrollment as they have been impacted by COVID and what we're doing to address some of those challenges with enrollment. Certainly, and it's taken up a good chunk of our time this past year, how we're responding to COVID-19. And then we'll talk about the strategic planning process from when I started in 2016 and what's transpired since I've been here. And then share with you kind of our planning going forward in the form of the Rhode Island College Compact. And so very quickly, if you turn the page there, you'll see the college profile. As many of you know, we are the first publicly founded, the first public institution of higher education in Rhode Island in 1854. Our enrollments have come down over the last couple of years. You'll see there we're just over 6,400 students today. Of course, many of our alumni, in fact, 70% of our alumni, 65,000 alumni around the nation, 70% stay right here in Rhode Island. They get a job, they raise families, to contribute to the economic base of the state. Today, we're serving nearly 3,000 high school students through our early enrollment program. It's among the oldest and among the largest early enrollment programs of its kind in the entire region. We have 6 different schools, certainly our Feinstein School of Education and Human Development, our Faculty of Arts and Sciences, our School of Business, recently fully accredited this past year, our School of Graduate Studies, our School of Nursing and Social Work. Here we go. And then you'll see there a snapshot of our total number of faculty, which has also been impacted in COVID, particularly our adjunct numbers. But we have 319 full-time faculty and 294 adjunct. There we go. If you can go to the next slide, just to highlight from the affordability side, we continue to see, and you can see there, we continue to be among the most affordable four-year public institutions in the entire region. Right there, and the only one a little more affordable is the University of Southern Maine. If you can go to the next slide. Equity and diversity continues to be a real strength of ours. You know, when I arrived in 2016, the freshman class was about 37% students of color. Just 3-4 years later, it hit 51%. Today, of our entire student body, we're about 48% students of color, have really become a first choice institution, not just for students of color, blue collar, working class families, Pell eligible students from across the state. Only about 10% of our students are out of state. And then this year we hit, I think, an important threshold mark. This year we're now qualified as a federally designated Hispanic-Serving Institution. Any school across the country that has at least 25% Hispanic student population, and a third of which of them are Pell eligible, which we're closer to 50%, they qualify for this designation. And this will open up some funding opportunities, federal funds for the college. We've also been working to strengthen our efforts around equity. In fact, we're working with the executive leadership team to develop some performance measures of how we want to continue to champion equity and inclusion across the college. How do we want to measure that, both qualitatively and quantitatively going forward? You go to the next slide, please. So here's the economic impact study. This study actually was just about completed almost a year ago. COVID certainly slowed down a lot of things, but now as we're moving forward, we're able to share the outcomes of this economic impact study. What the study found is that the total economic impact of Rhode Island College is over $213 million to Rhode Island. Rick's budgetary expenditures total about $139 million, and our students spent approximately $36 million across the state. Of course, we support over 1,500 jobs and provide about $56 million in income. Our economic activities resulted in a tax impact of about $26 million for the state. The value of the Rhode Island College degree just continues to soar. Approximate alumni lifetime earnings are about $1.4 million, a little over $1.4 million for a bachelor's degree from Rhode Island College. And of our 1,681 students that graduated in 2019, they're expected to obtain a total of $50.9 million in marginal lifetime earnings. So again, a great study showing how this institution continues to be a very relevant and very powerful engine for economic development in the state. If you go to the next slide, we've also continued to do some tremendous work in modernizing our facilities across the campus. We launched the Building Futures plan, the 2017 RIC Master Plan, and we have now completed over the last 5 years over $50 million in modernization efforts. We've modernized Gage Hall, Craig Lee, of course, our largest academic building on campus. And then we built an entire wing on Fogarty Life Science, which holds now our School of Nursing on campus. In 2018, we continued to build on this modernization campaign, and we received a $25 million bond to modernize our Horace Mann Feinstein School of Education and Human Development building. This now, and you really have to have a chance to see this, this will be a state-of-the-art teacher training and preparation facility in New England. Just outstanding work. In fact, it is on time, the project is on time, and it will be open this time next year. And then voters, as many of you know, just over the last couple of weeks, they supported question number 1, which was the higher education bond. Through that approval, Rhode Island College now will receive an additional $38 million for our primary science building, which is our Clark Science Building, which we're very excited about and will be working on going forward. Let's talk about enrollments, which is the next slide. I'm not going to sugarcoat this at all. There's been some challenges with our enrollment. You'll see here, when I came on board in 2016, we were just under 7,400 students. We've seen a decline. In fact, the college had seen a decline for about the last 10 years. And now in the fall of 19, our enrollments are about 6,438, which is just under a 13% decline. For the total fall 2021 applications, we continue to see that they're quite a bit down, in large part because of COVID-19. We're down about 873 applications, or about 20%. Interestingly enough, transfer applications, in fact, just last week they were up. This week they're even, but they continue to be very stable. We are seeing ongoing challenges with our enrollments, whether it's COVID-19, the decline in the high school graduation population, or just the overall economy. We thought we would see more transfers from CCRI, and we believe because of the economy, more students were taking advantage of jobs. Now with COVID, many of those jobs have been lost, of course. We've also been working closely with our guidance counselors in the high schools, and we've recently made an announcement of in-person activities and instruction for fall 2021. What our high school guidance counselors have told us is that many students are not making decisions about college unless they hear that the college is planning to be open in person this coming fall. And so we've made that announcement. We think that will impact our applications around the corner. What have we been doing in response to all this? Well, we've done a number of things. We really have begun to professionalize our enrollment management processes, systems, and technology. We hired a new dean of enrollment management, if you will, kind of an enrollment management czar that works with our academic affairs, our student services, our financial aid, registration records, really looking broadly about how we attract students. Professional advising, since I've been here, we've been requesting resources for advising. We finally been able to realign some resources over the last year. This is critical in the retention, persistence, and helping our students get the classes they need to eventually graduate. We're making great progress on that front. You know, the research will show it costs far less to keep a student than to recruit a student. And so those retention efforts are very important for the college going forward. We've modernized a number of areas with new technology, certainly advising with our Starfish platform and Salesforce, which is a customer relations management system to provide personalized communication with prospective students all the way through enrollment. We have ongoing and regular communications with guidance counselors, and we continue to look at the transfer student experience, working very, very closely with CCRI on our 2+2 programs and helping those students transition to Rhode Island College. And then certainly graduate students. Over the last couple of years, in fact, we've seen a growth in enrollments on our graduate students. In fact, this year, despite the decline in undergraduate enrollments, we did see a little bit of an uptick in our graduate students on the enrollment side. If you can go to the next slide on COVID. As you've heard, certainly in the national news, colleges and universities have been working very, very hard to respond effectively, keeping their students, their faculty, their staff, their campus communities safe from COVID. And certainly in consultation with RIDO, RIC has transitioned to operate predominantly remotely throughout the pandemic. 95% of our classes have been in remote. Our faculty have had to transition about 1,000 courses, both in the fall and now in the spring. We had to de-densify our residence halls, so right now we're only about 20% capacity, and that has also impacted our dining services, and we have limited athletic competitions and practices on campus as well. I have to give real kudos to our faculty, staff, and students. They've done just an outstanding job shifting and transitioning to this remote learning environment. We had to accelerate professional development for our faculty on the instruction side and in course design, and better using our online learning management system. We think we're in a much stronger position on the other side of COVID to provide better access to Rhode Islanders as a result of this very challenging year. We've also developed and implemented a variety of mitigation protocols around sanitation, building access, personal safety, and limited in-person contact. And then we also, through the good work of our Student Health Center, students in our School of Social Work, and HR office, we stood up our own testing clinic and tracking system to find cases early and to stop any spread on campus. Despite being remote, we do have about 1,000 students, faculty, and staff that come to campus every day. You can go to the slide on strategic planning. When I arrived in 2016, I was presented on day one with a fairly significant operational audit. I learned that there was about 42 comments made in this audit, and frankly, a lot of work. And over the course of the first 12 months of my time at Rhode Island College, we addressed every single item in that audit and came out on the other side very, very well. Since then, we initiated our Affirming Our Strength, Building Our Future 2017 to 2020 action plan. And there's been a number of very positive outcomes and deliverables that have resulted from that plan, from that 3-year plan. We created a new division of student success. We also, as part of that redesign, we realigned our enrollment management. So once again, we can professionalize and gather better data to do a stronger outreach on the enrollment front. We started first-year student programming for the first time at the college in a more coordinated and strategic way, and with also a RIC 100 course to complement that. We initiated professional advising that really came to fruition just over the last year and a half, again, to provide better guidance in students choosing courses. And research is very clear. Those institutions that have strong professional advising broadly at their campus. They tend to have better retention, persistence, and graduation rates. We opened up a new Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with the changing demographic of the state and certainly that of the college. We wanted to make sure we were creating a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness with the growing diverse population of students on our campus. We completed a campus climate survey that really looked at the student experience. We completed as well our economic impact study, which I just shared with you. We advanced fundraising by leaps and bounds. In fact, we have now doubled fundraising at the campus. And this year, in fact, we've already announced the second largest gift in the history of the college, a $1.2 million gift from the Ferdinandis, two alum that are still care deeply about this institution. We initiated and continue to build out our Building Futures RIC Master Plan, which we have found great success. And after 15 years of not having an advertising campaign, we launched our Be Bold marketing campaign, which we now have TV advertising, radio, and a very, very robust social media presence. We did start just prior to COVID, the fall before COVID, in that November of 19, in preparation for the conclusion of the 2017-2020 strategic plan. We started a strategic planning process so that when we completed the 2020, we would have a new plan. Well, of course, COVID has delayed that entire process. We started out with 60 faculty, staff, and students, a large number of our campus community to help think about the future of the institution. But then over the last year, we really put a lot of time and attention in our COVID response. And if you could go to the next slide, where we have pivoted in the planning process, as we've said, to Rhode Islanders, we want to have a compact for Rhode Islanders for the future of the college and focus in 4 very specific areas. We think one way to stabilize and potentially grow our enrollment and to better serve Rhode Islanders is by expanding and accelerating flexible options so that Rhode Islanders can get a high quality, high value degree, whether it's online, evening, or through weekend programs. And so we're doing that work right now, and we think that's going to better serve Rhode Islanders, particularly now as the state works to recover from this pandemic. We're also going to invest in academic excellence and student success. Provost Tate, I know, is on the video call right now. She has already initiated a program review process, not just looking at the quality of our academic programs, but the financial feasibility of these programs and their ability to attract new populations and new enrollments. We're going to continue to focus on student success and clear those pathways so that students can graduate on time. Affordability continues to be a high priority for us. We want to be in the top 20% of the most affordable public 4-year institutions in all of New England. In fact, I've already talked to our Commissioner of Post-Secondary Education, Commissioner Gilkey, who is also on this evening's video call, and talked about proposing a rational and predictable tuition policy. And that would really help Rhode Island families to plan for and prepare to pay for tuition going forward. Right now, it's a little bit of a yo-yo depending on our budget from one year to the next. And I think a policy like that could really help families. And then finally, advocacy is a high priority right now. We need certainly our faculty, our staff, our students, our 65,000 alumni, friends, and donors to tell the RIC story better. I've been here 5 years, and I've heard enough that we're Rhode Island's best kept secret. We have to stop being that secret, and we have to tell our story better. And so advocacy is going to be one of the ways that we do that. And all of this work has really led to some tremendous advancements on the national ranking front. If you can go to the next slide, we now have become, over the last 5 years, a regional leader in quality and affordability. This past year, the Washington Monthly, which is a very reputable national ranking organization, they ranked Rhode Island College #1 among master's granting public institutions in New England. Another very reputable organization is the U.S. News and World Report. The 2021 report ranked us number 2 for social mobility among all public colleges, universities in New England. And that social mobility, what that measures is our ability to move blue-collar, working-class families, communities of color, move them up the economic ladder. We do that better than virtually anybody else in New England today. We were also ranked in the top 10 of best public universities, medium and large, in New England, according to that same study from the U.S. News and World Report. And the 2021 Money Magazine rankings also ranked us in the top 10 best value public colleges among medium and large institutions in New England. And so while it certainly has been a challenging year, in fact, some different challenges throughout the 5 years that I've been here, we have had tremendous success in moving the institution forward and really better serving Rhode Islanders with a very high quality, high value, and more into the future, a much more accessible degree for Rhode Islanders. And so thank you. Those are my remarks, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You certainly covered a lot of information. Before we get into the substance of the Alvarez and Marcel report, you mentioned projects like looking at enrollment, the direction of the institution, your COVID response, predictable policies for paying tuition. Did you undertake those studies independent of the A&M contract? Was that ongoing? Was that already underway before you found?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Good question, Madam Chair. I got to tell you, from day one in 2016, when I was hired in to begin addressing enrollment challenges, both on the recruitment and admission side and the retention side. As the research will show, there had already been a good decade of declining enrollment at Rhode Island College when I arrived. And so we have been working to put in new policies, new technology, modernizing and professionalizing our enrollment systems at the college.
So, Doctor, when did you personally or your office receive the Alvarez and Marcel interim report?
So the final report we received just in the last day, this final report.
Interesting. Okay, before we ask questions of Dr. Sanchez, and Doctor, you can sit for a little while in case we need to come back to you for some clarification.
Happy to.
Okay.
Happy to.
Okay. So I think next on the agenda, we're going to, I think, Mr. Del Giudice, are you on first for your team?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Have you decided? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the reason for the report and what you hoped to find. So do you have a presentation for us, and then maybe we'll ask you more specific questions later? Or
I do have some opening prepared comments for you that I
Okay.
think will answer a lot of your questions.
why don't you proceed then? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As the Chair mentioned, my name is Tim Del Giudice. I'm currently the Chair of the Council on Post-Secondary Education, or OPC, as you'll hear me refer to it as I talk through. It's a volunteer position that I've held since 2018. I'd like to start tonight with the committee to give you some background information that'll hopefully answer a lot of the questions that have come up about the A&M contract. As most of you know, also for background, the council just completed a search for our new commissioner, which took 18 months from August of 2019 through January of 21. During that time, our general counsel, Ron Cavallaro, agreed to take on the duties of acting commissioner, and Ron is online with us tonight also, as is our brand new commissioner, Dr. Shannon Gilkey, who I believe is going to speak after me. Dr. Gilkey started in his role 6 weeks ago and was not part of the OPC decision-making process prior to his start date on February 1st, 2021. I will provide the context revolving around A&M and Rhode Island College. Dr. Gilkey can talk about higher education in Rhode Island, where it is and where it's going, not where it's been. The financial issues that we're facing at Rhode Island College started quite a while ago, back in the 2008 recession. They experienced significant cuts in state aid, And President Sanchez, like President Dooley, raised these concerns at every annual budget meeting that we've held in the past few years. Yet year over year, his team has always found a way to manage through the college's fiscal structural deficits, and they were able to plow through and get their work done. But knowing that Rick has been underfunded since 2008, with the cuts that had taken place, we were able to work with Governor Raimondo and this General Assembly to increase Rhode Island College's budget every year since 2015. However, Rick remains below the pre-recession funding levels that they were at in 2008. President Sanchez rightfully raised these concerns time and again with the council, as he should. And then COVID happened. COVID took what was a financial concerning issue and made them that they could have become a much worse situation, not just at Rhode Island College, but at institutions like them and others across the country. As the president just mentioned, the campuses were forced to close, enrollments dropped, the state didn't have an FY21 budget approved. We were being told to prepare for additional cuts in state revenue that could be anywhere between 5 and 20%. Institutions locally and nationally, as the president said, had to pivot to online and remote delivery, while they were facing many other unbudgeted issues that were coming to the forefront because of COVID and the fight to get the campuses back online. With the education that the presidents had provided to the council over the years, these financial concerns were not a surprise, and we were ready to act. The president, working with his team, made serious budget reductions. The council authorized and requested staff reductions, salary reductions. The president eliminated spending, and his team made a lot of very hard decisions. And the college, again, was able to work through those challenges being faced by COVID as they worked through. And they also were able to leverage some of the first round of CARES Act money that were made available to help with some of the one-time expenses related to COVID. Given the historical underfunding and underinvestment at higher institutions at facilities such as Rhode Island College, we knew these decisions were, again, very hard, necessary, but they were only temporary solutions. They were not going to ensure that Rick was going to receive the funding and the allocations they needed to be as strong as they could be. And as chair of the Council on Post-Secondary, it's my responsibility to advocate for Rhode Island College and CCRI. So with that, I requested that OMB send some financial professionals to the college to help his team at the college. And those OMB folks did go out, and I got feedback pretty quickly that they recognized the same issues that President Sanchez and his team had raised over the previous few years, which added to my concern. So I went back and I requested a meeting with the governor to advocate for additional support for Rhode Island College. She also understood the issues and was familiar with the lack of funding going back to 2008 and the deficits that these institutions have all faced. She requested that I get with the Director of Administration, OMB, and her office to see what else we could do. So a subsequent meeting took place in December. At that point, again, I met with the Governor's Office, OMB, and Department of Administration. I learned about A&M. I learned that I'd never heard of them before, but I'd learned about them at this call. They were already under contract with the state supporting other agencies and departments, and that they had an education team that might be able to help with some of the issues at Rhode Island College. Everyone was in agreement that I should meet with A&M, and if they were able to take on the added scope to support Rick, we could get them working quickly because they were already working in Rhode Island and already had existing state contracts. The goal was to assess the situation, provide actionable recommendations to the governor that she could then incorporate into her FY22 budget submission, which was about 10 weeks away. So we took a look at what we could go do. I made it clear to everybody we were meeting with at OMB in the state that Rhode Island College nor the Commissioner's Office had any funds available for an outside consultant. That I was assured by the state that they would find the funds necessary to pay for the consultants. So again, that this work would be done at no cost to Rhode Island College and at no cost to the Commissioner's Office. So we went off and had our interview with A&M, and it was clear that they had the depth and a host of team members that could do this work. This included not only analysts, but experts that specialized in financial sustainability programs, growth models, and within the education industry, and all had prior history with the state of Rhode Island. So again, this was additional help at no cost to Rick, no cost to the council, and no cost to the Office of Post-Secondary Commissioner. Working with A&M, we identified 5 areas that we thought would be able to help Rhode Island College in a lasting impact. Similar to the issues that the president efforts the president just raised: enrollment strategies, program review, operational review, grant optimization, and COVID responses. I told the state team that we liked everything we heard and that we should proceed. And within a day or two of that, the state provided a contract, and I brought the A&M team to President Sanchez for the first time, ready to go to work. That work started in December, around December 13th or 16th in that window. A&M was off conducting interviews and digging deep into the roots of the college to understand the history of the college, the programs at the college, and where the college potentials were. Then, not long after that, in January, Governor Raimondo was nominated to Commerce. Within a day or 2 or 3 of that, this committee raised several concerns about the A&M contract. So it was no longer clear to me with the Commerce nomination that we were working toward an FY22 budget that we were going to make some real changes to support Rhode Island College, or that it was even going to be a Raimondo budget anymore at that point. And this committee raised several concerns about the contract. So on January 14th, I made the decision and I canceled the contract. The document we provided to you from A&M was a summary of their very much, I'll call it, unfinished work. It was a summary of their initial observations. They were still in the information gathering stage. And as I said, they were still digging into the roots to understand the college, the situation around the college, and the best paths to help move it forward. They were not allowed and did not have time to do any analysis, to test any concepts, or to evaluate past practices, best practices, and ways that they could move things forward. Again, they just had time to make initial observations, which were put into the summary that we provided to you. Based on these initial observations, we at OPC plan to work with Rhode Island College to prioritize that information along with the work already underway at Rhode Island College and make the plans that will best support the college and its future. Before I close, I want to again address the question that I'm sure you have about the work product. And again, the work was stopped early in its timeline and is incomplete. I do, however, believe that the process and the work that was done provides OPC and Rick with useful information. There are some insights, there are some focus areas, and places where we can spend our energy to, again, help address some of the issues that have been ongoing at Rhode Island College long before President Sanchez arrived, long before I came onto the council. As a lifelong Rhode Islander, I know the value that a strong, thriving Rhode Island College provides to our state. My wife is one of the alum that President Sanchez just mentioned. In fact, we need all of our public colleges to be thriving in order for our economy to thrive, and that's why I volunteer in this position. We were at a critical juncture in the middle of the pandemic. We had ongoing financial uncertainty. This was an attempt to intervene quickly and smartly so we could make some targeted, real investments to move the college forward out of that situation. I hope I didn't take too much of your time in the opening statement, but I wanted to share everything that I know and everything that I was involved in making these decisions. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the chairwoman or the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Del Giudice. I think you answered one of my questions as your presentation went on. You mentioned that before you entered into this contract with A&M, you, the governor, OMB, and DOA sat down and agreed that this work needed to be undertaken. And then later on you said that the contract was signed. I think you said that for the first time in December, you engaged Rhode Island College, Dr. Sanchez, in this conversation. So am I to understand that your commission decided to undergo a lengthy, expensive evaluation, I'll call it, of one of the state's major colleges without including the president? You involved him in the conversation after your office, the governor, OMB, and DOA decided to sign this contract. He was not brought into the conversation, or am I misunderstanding?
For the part that you're focused on about when President Sanchez was brought into the conversation, you're exactly right. We did that work prior to bringing the A&M discussion to the president. We were aware of the ongoing fiscal issues. The president had recently, in that time frame, I want to say, I don't have exact dates, but in November, December time period, along with Provost Tate, gave us a fabulous presentation about their planning and some of the programs that they were going to go off and do. And we were concerned that while the work was well planned out and was thoughtful, was going to take some time. And we were hoping that if we could bring more resources, we could help them do that work sooner, faster, and in time to affect the FY22 budget submittal, as opposed to having to wait for the FY23 budget submittal. We thought we'd be able to spend some resources now to identify places to invest to help move the college forward.
And I think you also said that during the planning to sign this A&M contract, you said someone in the state told you that the state had funds available to do this kind of work. Well, who told you that?
So that's correct. So in a Zoom call like this one I had with, I would say it was DOA, OMB, there were probably 10 or 12 folks on that call when they brought A&M to my attention. Again, I don't know exactly which person said that A&M was there or that they were under contract, but it was generally known by everybody on the call but for me, that who A&M was and what their capabilities were, and that they would be a great resource to bring to the discussion.
And I'm not going to ask a question, I'm going to make one comment before I go to Representative Place. I did a quick search of other companies, educational research companies that do this work, and I found there were others besides A&M, Alvarez and Marcel. So why did you folks choose A&M? Specifically because you were told that there was money for them, or were they the least expensive?
I would tell you that the perspective that I took was that they were already under contract with the state and that we would be able to get them to on the ground and working in a matter of days, not weeks or months if we had to go through a full bidding process. It was my understanding from the state side, because they were already engaged with a state contract, that we were going to be able to expedite the process and bring them into the conversation quickly, and that they were very well qualified to do the work.
Representative Place, you had a question. Proceed, please.
I've got a couple of questions, really. So what you're saying is they were brought to you in a package and you were told to use them?
No, sir, that is not right.
So you had an option not to use A&M?
I had an option not to use A&M or not to do anything at all.
So you had an option. They said you can use A&M or we don't do anything at all.
No, sir.
Well, that's kind of sound like what you said. I mean, it sounds like the state brought them to you and said they're paid for. Can you please use them?
No, I would say I brought a problem statement to the state. They said, we might have a solution. Why don't you go talk to these folks and see if they have the capability and the skill to do the work that you need done. And if you do, we can go ahead and put them under contract rather quickly.
Do you know what other agencies that they're currently doing work for in the state? In terms of your conversations with them, have they mentioned other areas they're working in the state right now?
I do not.
Just so you know, I know they're all over the state from my understanding. I definitely know they're in BHDDH. They've been doing work for BHDDH for quite some time now. I know finance has seen some of their work product as well. They're in a couple of spots right now.
They appear to be our contractor of choice, and I'm not quite clear why. Representative Casimiro, and then Chairwoman Williams.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Delajudas, thank you for your coming in front of Oversight today. You mentioned that Rick has been underfunded since 2008 with serious budget reductions, which I want to get back to. However, who at the end of the day signed the contract for $76,000 per week?
So there are, I believe, 5 signatures on the contract. Myself, representative from DOA, our acting commissioner, President Sanchez, and the Alvarez side of it obviously signed it as well.
$76,000 a week. Everyone in this room, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'm pretty sure I am, everyone in this room wants to know what you were expecting for $76,000 per week.
I was expecting a very thoughtful, well-informed report that we would be able to find actionable items to support Rhode Island College today and going into the future, making it a smarter, more efficient, and better college.
So you were spending $76,000 per week to be more efficient?
That's correct.
I just did the math, and that's $304,000 to look for efficiency.
Right. I just want to go back to, the budget reductions you mentioned. You were underfunded since 2008. You've taken serious budget reductions. Can you talk to me about salaries?
I can try. I'm not sure.
So I know that you said that everyone has taken a salary reduction, but can you speak to the leadership team at RIC and what has happened with their salaries?
Yes, I can tell you President Sanchez leaned in quite a bit across the college. If he's still on the line, I'll let him speak specifically to his actions that were fully supported by the council.
Absolutely. The administration took very quick action from the executive team. All deans and associate vice presidents were asked to take a cut of 5%. All vice presidents took a cut of 7.5%, and the president's office took a 10% cut.
Yep. So, Mr. Sanchez, and you in particular, can you tell me about your salary history?
In which way? Yes.
So,
which way would you?
I'm under the assumption that your salary went from $240,000 a year to $275,000 a year. Is that correct?
I believe that sounds correct.
So, okay, so that's correct, but everyone else, we're talking about serious budget reductions, and you're getting a $35,000 salary increase.
So yeah, let me kind of clarify. So I was brought in on a 3-year contract in 2016. That contract concluded in 2019, and so we had to renegotiate with the council and the chair a new contract. And so that adjustment that you see there is really renewing and changing the contract with myself.
Now, I know that...
Chairman, if you want to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll just reiterate what President Sanchez has said, that the president's contracts are 3-year contracts at a flat rate. So rather than where you would normally see a COLA increase or a step increase year over year, they're flat for the 3 years, and then it's renegotiated after that 3-year period for the next 3-year period.
So without using any other names for people who are on this call, others have received a 9% salary increase. 9%.
So,
You can go onto the local portals and verify this. 9% salary increases, and you're telling us you were underfunded since 2008?
So any increases that any of our faculty, staff, or administration have are either contractual, and I think that's one of the challenges certainly we have at Rhode Island College are the mandatory expenses that hit us every year. The data that we have certainly show that over the last 10 years, we've seen a decline of about 13.2% in funding. In fact, RIPEC here in Rhode Island just came out with their 2021 study showing that in comparison with other peer institutions across the country, Rhode Island is actually supported per capita about 29.9% less than institutions across the country. And so I certainly understand some of the questions being raised about increases, but those certainly at the college are contractual and tied to union contracts and collective bargaining in virtually every case.
Okay, and then this is going to be my final point, because I know everybody in this room is wanting to get in on this conversation. But at the beginning of this presentation, you said that enrollment is down 20%. Shouldn't expenses be down as well?
So I indicated that applications right now are down 20%. That's just for this coming fall. We fully intend, those are just initial applications. Students still got to get admitted, they have to give deposits, and then they have to get enrolled. Yes, you're absolutely right. When our enrollments are down, as they were this past fall, by 6%, we have to adjust. The way we've adjusted, we've made hard decisions on reducing certain student services. We've had to reduce adjunct positions. We've had to close low enrolled programs. So you're absolutely right. When the enrollments don't come in, we have to adapt our budget.
And I'd also add, again, at the time when we were moving into this, this last November, December, we were still in the heat and the rage, as we still are, of COVID. We're all sitting, most of us are sitting in our homes, as opposed to with you at the State House. And we were, again, faced with, we did not have an FY21 budget. We did not have a clear path to what enrollments were going to look like. We had additional expenses coming. The Congress is paralyzed and not making any movement on the next stimulus and other funding that we all were waiting for and needed. So it would have been imprudent for us not to act, not to bring the resources in, to find ways to weather through this storm and launch the college when we come out in a stronger, healthier way on the other side.
I know I said I was going to give up the mic, but I got one more thing for you. On August 20th of 2020, a press release came out of Rhode Island College. College must reduce operating expenses by 15% in the face of a projected $10.4 million deficit for 2021. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure, that may be, if I'm recalling correctly, that summer, I think it was communicated to all state agencies that we had to prepare and plan for potential worst-case scenario of a 15% cut. But that wasn't just Rhode Island College. That was all public higher education institutions, and I believe all state agencies at the time.
Okay, I'm going to let Representative Blum go.
Chairwoman Williams, and then Whip Chippendale has his hand raised. Chairwoman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me? Because this is kind of late. First of all, President Sanchez, I want to thank you for the slideshow that was presented. I myself, I'm a visual. I appreciate the time that may have been put into it to get it together to present it here this afternoon. However, I'm not amused. I'm not impressed with regards to it because of many reasons. Some that were answered and questions that were asked, posed to you. I wrote to you and you have yet to respond to my concern, and it had to do with the Henry Barnett School. However, I did get a call from Anacano Morales, and at the time that I got that call, I was not in the best light to be able to speak with her about my concern. However, you have not responded to date. She has not gotten back to me, and it's been moot. So, going on to, so I want to just bring that to your attention. So that was strike number one. One of the strikes, I should say. Mr. De Judas, if I'm saying your name correctly. And I apologize if I'm not. But when you talk about the state said, for me, that could mean anything. So I'm saying to you, say the name or stay off the playground, volunteer or paid staff. So I know that the conversation that you have had, you know who you was talking to. So I would appreciate that you give the names when you're speaking so that I don't believe or be put in the position of assuming that you're covering for someone else. Because this whole situation here, for me, is nothing more than another shell, sham, scam. It's disappointing to hear that you and others have taken the liberty to come up with this entity, A&M, at $76,000 a week, and you had the Henry Barnett School there in need of, and each and every one of you have been getting paid and enormous salaries, I must say, as well. The parents were left in a total disarray with regards to the information that was not properly given to them at all. One. So I would also ask of you, do not use the pandemic as a cover, because everybody had to deal with it. This situation, the failure of Rhode Island College, has been going on for more than a decade. For all of a sudden, you and others in that institution to claim that in the last year or two that you needed help to deal with your finances in-house, and you had to get some hookup from the floor up to come in and tell you what your problems are when you all knew what they are and what you needed to do, tells me that I'm not comfortable with trusting anything that you have to say. And this goes for Mr. President Sanchez as well as you, Mr. De Jesus. I can't accept what you are saying to be all true, neither one of you. And that is my opinion and my expressed feeling with regards to your presentation. The other part that I'm going to put on both of you and the rest of your team is, as far as the children, you know, Mr. Sanchez was very nice, eloquent to talk about the diversity and the population of the enrollment of more students of color. What has happened, you all has disenfranchised children of color from our community from attending Henry Barnett School. I know that you've hooked up and got a partnership and going out into East Providence sometime next year. That's because of the parents got together and made sure that this was not going to be the end of Henry Barnett. However, by your action, Mr. Sanchez, Mr. Jesus, and the others, those children in our urban cities will be disenfranchised by your actions. They will not be able to participate in that school at all. You have made it more difficult. So when you are talking about diversity and inclusiveness, You all are part of not making that happen. Just the opposite, especially with our younger population that needs that quality education, seeing that the others is failing. You know, I'm done. I'm done.
I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was thinking that, you know, since that's a whole nother topic, maybe we could dedicate a meeting to that, maybe after the April break.
No, I'm good. I got their message, so I'm good. I'm good.
Okay,
So, Madam Chair, if I could.
yep, go ahead.
So, Chairwoman Williams, thank you for your comments. And when I refer to the state, I can tell you clearly that when I'm dealing at the Department of Administration, I was dealing with Director Smiley. When I refer to working with the governor's office, I was dealing with the Deputy Chief of Staff, Kevin Gallagher. And when I was dealing with OMB, which was Jonathan Woolmer, who I think is OMB, I'm not sure on the right title. And then on that side, DOA and OMB, there were also a couple of other subordinate workers who I don't know their names that worked for Director Smiley and Director Woolmer. So I can't tell you by name kind of everybody that was on the call, but those were the principals that I'm referring to.
Like
when I
I
refer
said.
to the state or DOA or OMB. So I will try to use by name personal names if you prefer. So that's on me if you're concerned about the titles. I'm certainly not here to withhold any information for you. And as far as the bringing outside help to the discussion at Rhode Island College, again, that was at the council level. I was the council acting on behalf of the council with Director Smiley, Director Woolmer, Mr. Gallagher, to try to do whatever we could to help bring Rhode Island College. And you're right, COVID is not the cause of any of the issues at Rhode Island College. However, COVID has exasperated all of the concerns at Rhode Island College and at URI and at CCRI and at UMass and any other college across the nation. It has certainly put fuel on the fire. So I hope that helps. And again, we can take on the Henry Barnard discussion at a future time if you'd like.
That Henry Barnett is a done deal. My whole thing is sitting here listening to your all's presentation confirms that, especially when you name the individuals, Brett Smiley and Gallagher and the governor and so forth. Like I said, and I will remain saying it publicly, it's nothing more than a sham scam, sham scam, with all those individuals giving a hookup from the floor up to individuals that you all are associated with. And the heck with the taxpayers of the state of Rhode Island. I'm done with that.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Well, I'll assure you, I was not a part of any type of scams, sham, or any other adjective. I totally respect you and your position, and I understand that, but it's not certainly anything I would be a party of, and I'm here to tell you everything you'd like to know about my involvement in leveraging this contract.
I understand and respect your response, but like I said, from my point of view, it is what it is. Thank you.
Next, we're going to go to Whip Chippendale, then to Representative Bautista, and then to Representative Knight. Whip Chippendale, proceed, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question will be directed to Mr. Del Giudice. I just kind of want to follow up on my colleague, Representative Place's question regarding how this contractor was chosen. I was kind of reading between the lines as you were speaking. It sounds as if because they're on the state master purchasing agreement already, it allowed them to interact with you more quickly. Is that what you stated?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I can't speak to the term you use, the master. I don't know how those things work.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, we have a very complex purchasing, obviously, procedure in the state, and certain vendors who we do business with frequently will be given a master purchasing agreement, and that does allow for quicker transactions. But what was the rush in the context of looking at other contractors that weren't on a master purchasing agreement? What was so urgent? Because it's not an impossible process to get a state contract. In fact, we do everything we can to make it as easy as possible. MPAs are used when COVID strikes and you need somebody to get in there and build plexiglass dividers because you have days. That's what that convenience offers. So I need to be impressed by whatever the convenience was, or the need for that convenience for the selection.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand the question. Again, I can't say for certain whether it was the master contract or a different, whatever that vehicle was, I'm not quite sure. I'll defer to the professionals across the street at DOA. What the timeline that I had set out for is, again, this was all happening in the week, early December. And we were trying to identify places where we could make smart investments before Governor Raimondo finished her FY22 budget proposal. So that gave us a defined time period of about 10 weeks, give or take a little bit. And what I was informed is that because this company was already engaged, we could get them to work in days as opposed to burning many of those weeks going through a bidding process that would shorten the amount of time they would have to actually perform the work. So because they were already engaged with the state, we would be able to move out more quickly to meet the timeline to make smart investments at Rhode Island College in the FY22 budget.
Okay. And that makes sense. Did they at that time or any time ever offer other contractors who were on master purchasing agreements or who you could engage as quickly? Did they ever at any point suggest others, or was this the only one suggested due to their status with a master purchasing agreement?
It was the only one suggested to me.
It was. Okay, thank you. That definitely clarifies the question that was asked. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Whip Chippendale. Representative Baptista.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Kind of sitting in an awkward position, so I'm just going to look that way, I suppose.
Are these not portable?
Yeah, I don't mean to give you folks my back, but I'm just going to...
That's okay. Don't worry about us. Go ahead.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the gentlemen for their presentation, especially to President Sanchez. I agree with you that the Rhode Island College community is very valuable to the state. In fact, I know that there are several representatives who call themselves alumni of Rhode Island College. I myself did not attend Rhode Island College, but I've been part of the Upward Bound program, and I know that Rhode Island College contributes a lot to the community, especially as someone myself who identifies as a first-generation college student, and I appreciate learning today about, especially about the affordability of Rhode Island College. I do have 3 quick questions for the gentleman from the Office of Post-Secondary Education. I don't want to butcher your last name, so that's why I said that. But my first question is, and I apologize if you covered this, but can you tell me as specifically and concisely as possible, in terms of quote-unquote manpower or full-time employees or hours or whatever you want to call it, what exactly did $76,000 a week purchase? Was it 10 people at full-time status, or in terms of people and what they were producing, what did the $76,000 a week buy?
Thank you, Rep. And for everybody, Tim is perfectly fine. I have trouble with my last name myself sometimes, so please, Tim is fine. So for what the A&M contract was to provide was the resources necessary to take on the 5 focus areas that we identified. They identified that there would be leads, and then behind the curtain and behind the house, I don't know the number of FTEs or how deep the bench was going to be for each one of those taskings.
All right, so I didn't really catch that. Is that, you can't tell us exactly how many people or hours, or was it not measured in that sense?
It was not measured in that sense. It was the scope of work, and they were going to bring the necessary and capable resources to perform the work.
Okay. My second question is not necessarily about the amount of money, but the amount of money in comparison to the community we're serving. So I believe one of the items was trying to tackle a $10 million deficit. Obviously, spending almost $1 million to do that is excessive. And second, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rhode Island College receives about $50 million of its budget from the state. And so this contract would have amounted to about almost 2% of the entire state allocation. And so I'm sure you have a lot of experience in government and in Rhode Island. I'm curious if there's a precedent to spending this amount of money relative to the community that you're spending the money on.
Thank you. So if I look at it slightly differently, so while we may have been looking at a potential of somewhere in the area of it, could have been 8, could have been 10, could have been $15 million deficit, it wasn't a one-time deficit. These are year-over-year concerns and problems that are going to be exacerbated over time. So what we were looking at was not a single one-time, this budget, one-time funding, what are we going to put a Band-Aid on today? We were looking at what real deep changes can we make, what improvements and investments can we make that are going to have a long-lasting impact over this budget and the budgets to come in the foreseeable future. And as far as the resources, like I said, I made it very clear to the folks at the state who I named earlier that Rhode Island College had no money to pay for this. It wasn't in their budget. The commissioner's office had no money to pay for this. And I was assured they were going to find other resources. And at that point, I did not know what that color of money or what that was going to look like. As I sit here today, I know that it was part of the federal CARES Act money, specifically they refer to as GEAR money, the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds that were used to apply for this money. So it was one-time money that was available from the federal government to the governor's discretionary fund for emergency education relief that we're using to fund this contract, which we hoped was going to deliver long-term, year-over-year savings and improvements in systems and procedures and support for Rhode Island College.
If I can ask you a summary of that question, can you provide us with examples of precedents with similar contracts of similar size? Because obviously that's part of the concern here. It's not necessarily that you folks didn't have the best intentions, it's that it's an extraordinary amount of money. And so in your experience, what can you point to as an analogous example where a contract like this has been executed either for similar services or similar scope? I'm just curious if you have an example.
I do not from the higher ed perspective. Again, from the team that I was working with from the state, having worked with this contractor in the past, I believe that this was the rate that they were using for the other contracts across the state. Again, you as a committee, not you, Representative Batista, might know that or be able to get that from the Department of Administration, but I don't have that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. My last question for you, obviously the contract was rescinded as soon as there was outreach from the House. I'm wondering, as you stand here today, do you stand by that contract? Do you believe that if the contract had been kept in place, that it would have produced results worthy of that amount of money, or do you think that it was a mistake?
No, I stand by the decision. I think while it was expensive, again, it was smart money invested in the future of the college and of the system. So again, we were looking to affect real change. I believe that had they continued, the FY22 budget as proposed by, if it were Governor Raimondo, would have had additional funds in the budget for Rhode Island College that would have allowed us to leap ahead and serve the populations that have been discussed here tonight more effectively and in a stronger way going forward. So I believe there were the best of intentions with the best resources available to make good decisions.
I could ask you a million more questions, but I want to cede the floor to my colleagues who I'm sure have plenty of questions themselves.
So, Mr. Del Judas, before I get to Representative Knight, this is a preliminary draft from A&M, and it's dated February 22nd, 2021, and Dr. Sanchez just indicated that he received it within the last couple of days, just in time for this meeting, I guess, today. So why hasn't he had a copy of this report before, I don't know, yesterday, Monday?
Because we had not paid the bill yet. And while the work stopped on January 14th, I felt it was inappropriate to share work that we hadn't paid for with anybody yet. So the bill had not been paid, so I had not released the report, the findings.
So then let me ask you one last question. So this is a preliminary draft. It says working papers subject to revision. So before we pay the bill, are we going to ask them to summarize and make specific recommendations for the 4 weeks of work they did do based upon strategic plan and long-term, all of the long-term things that you mentioned, so that then that one-time budget fixes during COVID? So are we going to get a final report based on the 4 weeks they did? Or is this it?
This is it. We are not. We were pens down on January 14th. If we wanted them to do any more work, we would have to re-engage them at a rate that I don't think we'd all find acceptable at this point.
So who's going to wrap up the work from this preliminary draft so that it's presentable to, say, Dr. Sanchez and his staff? He's just been handed it, and I don't know, I hate to say it, but like a lot of drafts and preliminary works and recommendations, they get put on a shelf. Nobody oversees it, so, I mean, and I'm not saying Rhode Island College and Dr. Sanchez are not doing the work based upon what he said. It sounds as if he's doing the work. So essentially, was this $304,000 for naught? This is it.
So I don't believe that it's for naught, and the Office of the Post-Secondary Commissioner and the Rhode Island College leadership will get together. There are some information in that report that I think can point us in the right direction and look at things that the president maybe either reaffirm some of the things that they're already doing or some new avenues. And this is where it might be a good place for me to introduce our new commissioner, who has a breadth and depth of higher ed national policy, and with his expertise leading our staff at the commissioner's office, working hand in glove with Rhode Island College, can glean some of the goodness from these pages and move us forward. So if appropriate, Chair, I'd like to ask Dr. Shannon Gilkey to step in with this question as well.
Dr. Gilkey, did you want to add anything?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chairwoman, and it's nice to meet everyone. I know there's a lot of cameras off and folks don't really know my face, but my name is Shannon Gilkey, and I am the commissioner. I started February 1st, 2021. You know, I'll tell you, just thinking about this issue, the future of our comprehensive colleges in this country, number one, you know, there's even prior to the pandemic, there's a number of issues facing comprehensive colleges and how they are tightly coupled to labor market outcomes, all the programs that they offer to make sure that students that are going through their programs are ready for jobs that pay. There's also, you know, other issues that comprehensive colleges are struggling with across the country, because many of them that were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and those facilities and infrastructure have aged over time. You know, roofs get old, HVAC systems, and there are a lot of institutions around the country, these schools, just like Rhode Island colleges, the colleges started off as normal schools and have really evolved to the workforce engines of the state when it comes to four-year degrees that need quite a bit of infrastructure investment. And at the same time, I think in this country, we are moving towards a lot of emphasis on our community colleges. I just came from a community college system in Kentucky that had served about 100,000 students, 16 colleges, and there's quite a bit of national interest in the two-year college, which is great because you'll hear me say a lot, and hopefully we'll get to meet soon to talk about the greater higher ed picture in the state of Rhode Island, is that over 90% of jobs created after the 2008 recession require some form of post-secondary credential. And so we need exponential growth in higher education in this country, and we need all of our institutions, frankly, public and private, making sure that we have a talent pipeline for businesses. And so investing in a comprehensive college to make sure that their programs are tightly coupled to the labor market, to make sure that they are reaching the evolving population that's changing. I think President Sanchez rightly mentioned that there is a decline in the K-12 pipeline of students, and there are more students are prioritizing work or taking care of their parents, and so therefore they're not as likely to go to school full-time, frankly, and they have other life priorities and life responsibilities, frankly. And so we have to pivot. Higher education has to pivot. And given some of the complex nature of our institutions and the population changes, and the value that, over $200 million, economic impact that Rhode Island College specifically has in this state, it's critical for the type of strategic investment in the trajectory of the institutions to be well thought out, inclusive of a very complex organization, and strategic. And to your point about, making sure you get a plan that you can not put on the shelf, but you can execute. That's critical to any organization, much less one that has the far reach and the far value for students. So I don't think that the issue of a comprehensive college trying to figure out how to pivot, but even before a national crisis like a pandemic, where you've had to move thousands of students into a remote environment within a matter of weeks. We had to move in Kentucky when I was there before the commissioner, 100,000 students in 8 weeks because of the pandemic. These things are life-altering for any organization, much less one that has 18 to 23-year-olds on campus in residential colleges. That's a complex problem. But it's not necessarily the only thing in this country that's been a challenge for our state colleges. I'll tell you, since I have the floor, that I'm a big believer in state colleges. I was a kid that came from first-generation student, laid off coal miner as a family, and struggled to pay our taxes. So I'm so glad this committee is asking these questions about the good use of public resources. But I was a kid that went to a state college and got a teaching degree. And that state college took a kid like me that couldn't pass college algebra, had to take remedial coursework, and it got me ready to go to the University of Oxford in England and graduate with distinction. And we don't expect Rhode Island College or any state college to make folks Oxford ready from mildly college ready like me, but we do expect them to produce and be part of our system, and what I like to call kind of our workhorse for 4-year degrees that is of value. And that's exactly the situation here, I think, with Rhode Island College. 70% of its graduates stay in the state, and that's why we need to continue to support them in this way, and many others, to be frank. But I thank you for the question, and I'm happy to take others.
Thank you, Mr. Gilkey. I know Representative Knight, and then Representative Speakman, and then Representative Carson. So Representative Knight, sorry you had to wait. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Gilkey, you were hired when?
I was voted in on January 6th, and I started February 1st.
February 1st, okay. Can I speak to Mr. Del Giusti again? Del Judas?
I believe you're on mute.
Can I speak to Mr. Del Judas again?
Yes.
If someone can put him on the screen? Thank you. Mr. Del Judas, my name is Jason Knight. I represent Barrington and Warren. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. What is the source of the funds for the contract?
It was, the source of the funds for the contract were part of the Federal CARES Act, specifically the GEARS, the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds,
So it was COVID money, right?
Correct, federal COVID money, correct.
Okay. Who was the first person that you know of who suggested hiring the contractor with these funds? Whose idea was this?
So I can't say for certain who said it first, but it was on that call where, as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Administration was covered by Director Smiley. OMB was there with Director Wolmer. The governor's office was there with Mr. Gallagher, and there were 2 or 3 other folks on the call who work in those organizations. Who said A&M first, I can't be certain, but everybody on the call was certainly aware of them, but for me.
Did the council approach Department of Administration, the governor's staff, and say, we need help? Or did the administration approach the council and say, we can provide help?
I, on behalf of the council, approached the administration on numerous times asking for help.
Okay. The price tag, I know Rep. Batista asked you how many people did that by, and you said you weren't sure. Did anybody supervise the execution of the contract from your office?
Yes, and actually, since the question with Rep. Batista, I can tell you the contract required 4 full-time FTEs plus the additional support staff required to perform the duties of the contract.
So how many human beings is that? 4 FTEs plus staff. How many human beings did that buy every week?
So I interacted with at least 4 people from A&M on a weekly basis.
I understand that. My question is, how many human beings, if you know, did that contract buy the services of every week?
I don't know.
Okay. That would be great if you could find that out for us. Who was charged with supervising the execution of the contract?
So it was multifold. We had a oversight committee that met with them weekly. That included myself and a couple of other members of the council and President Sanchez and some of his leadership team.
Was there a single human being who had responsibility to ensure that the contract was performed as agreed?
We did that as a committee.
So your answer is no. There was not a single human being who had the responsibility and accountability to ensure that the contract was performed per the agreement. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Was there a premium in the contract for a quick turnaround? The contractor was hired to perform a big job in a relatively short period of time. Do you know if the contract contained a premium for turning that around so quickly?
I don't believe it did.
Okay. My last question, sir, is I'm looking at I am looking at the website for the Council on Post-Secondary Education. It indicates that some of your duties are to approve a systematic program of information gathering, processing, and analysis addressed to every level of higher education in Rhode Island, and to prepare and maintain a 5-year funding plan for the higher education that implements the strategic financial recommendations of the Board of Education, among others. Would you agree that those are the goals and those are part of the duties for the council?
I would.
Okay. And those are the duties year in and year out, right?
Correct.
You have had a responsibility to help develop the RIC budget, not just for FY 2021, but for previous years. Is that correct?
Correct. Each year we hold a budget hearing for the institution. The council approves a budget, submits it to the Board of Education, who ratifies it, who submits it to the governor's office, who then takes that under advice, submits a final budget to the General Assembly, who then has another opportunity to amend it, and then the state budget is approved.
How many people work for the council? How many human beings work for the council full-time?
I believe we submitted the org chart. I want to say there are a total of 31 FTEs, but not all of them are filled. So I believe there are about 27, but give me a little room on that number at any given moment.
So here's my question with that as the background. There's approximately 30 or 31 people who are paid for by the state of Rhode Island, and I imagine paid well, to collect and analyze data and to develop budgets for RIC. And in this particular case, the council felt that they had to go out for outside help so that a consultant at $76,000 a week could do what I think is your primary mission. So why is it that the council had to hire out to do the job that the taxpayers hired the council to do?
So most of the, or I shouldn't say most, about half of the employees at the commissioner's office are in restricted roles operating the workforce center and the nursing center. The actual budget and finance departments are handled by the institutions themselves. They develop their own budget and submit it to the council.
But the council's job is to make the budgeting recommendations. I understand you're going to get input from the colleges, but here, you're supposed to know with an expert level of knowledge the budgeting process for RIC, what they need, what they don't need, what their obstacles are, what their problems are, what their inflows are, their outflows are, all this stuff. But in this particular case, you had to go to a consultant that works for the state of Rhode Island and has gathered a lot of money. And I'll just, for the record, I'll point out that in FY 2021, according to the Rhode Island.gov transparency file, they've collected $4.6 million from the state doing services for the Department of Health, the Department of Administration, and in the previous fiscal year, they had some DCYF action, among others. So this is clearly a go-to consultant for the Department of Administration. My question is why couldn't the council, who is tasked with performing the job that was hired out to the consultant, do the job themselves?
Because the work that we were identifying was bigger than the council's staff's ability due to the ongoing historical lack of funding from the state and the opportunity to affect real change with some robust investments in the governor's FY22 budget. We felt it was most effective to get additional resources with more experience and steep in education background to bring to that discussion.
Thank you. Nothing further, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Knight. Representative Speakman?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Del Giudice, what other higher ed clients did Alvarez and Marcel have? I couldn't find any on the website, but I assume that they have done work with other higher ed clients?
They have, and now I'm going off memory, but there were at least 4 other institutions that they referenced in their discussions with us early on. I don't want to make up an answer, but there were several, not again 3, 4, 5-ish. But again, I don't want to make up names. I'm not quite positive.
Okay, thanks. I couldn't find them on the website, but I will take your word for it. I should truth in advertising. I'm a professor. I've been in academics for 40 years. I'm a proud product of public higher education, but now I work at a private institution in Rhode Island, Roger Williams University. This sector, the higher ed sector, after restaurants and hotels and the service industry, is the hardest hit by COVID for a variety of reasons, which I won't go into. My president took a 15% pay cut, and I have taken 2 5% pay cuts in the course of COVID, as have the facility staff and all the others. So I feel the pain, literally, that the faculty and staff and administrators at Rhode Island College feel. I cannot understand why one would do a management analysis in this year. I cannot imagine what good data would be generated when you have students studying from home, faculty teaching hybrid, faculty working from home. I cannot imagine what good findings you would get. So the timing puzzles me a little bit. This idea of a quick turnaround, again, I've worked at universities for my entire career, and they are big and complex. You have tenured faculty members, you have programs that have existed for years that maybe shouldn't, but to try to decide which academic programs to shut down to save money, it's a very, very long-term project that's tied to projections of student enrollment and so forth. So I think Representative Knight asked about why the rush, or someone asked why the rush, and I can't imagine what good findings would have been generated by this. I gather you assume some would have, because you're tied to the annual budget cycle, I understand that, but I don't quite understand so tell me the thinking around deciding to do this in the middle of a pandemic.
Certainly. First, let me thank you for your dedication to education and your support of the Rhode Island's goals and moving our education system forward from Roger Williams. The historical data going back again from the 2008 cuts, I'm looking at the chart we provided. I'm looking at the first reduction was a reduction in over $600,000. The following year in FY09 was a $4.5 million cut. The year in FY10 was a $2.2 million cut. So the sustained cuts early on coming off the base at Rhode Island College, and the same is true at the University of Rhode Island when we had governance of the university and at CCRI. These cuts have been devastating and long-term. But again, as I said in my opening remarks, the president and his team have managed through these every year. Every year they'd come and seek a modest increase in state funding. We'd all want to give them more. But again, through that budget process that you all know better than I, it's a hard thing to do when you're managing that across all of the budgets. So we felt, well, again, then we bring in the COVID, which exasperated all of these problems. They took, in my opinion, COVID took situations that were spread out over years and brought them into weeks and months or days where they were being realized with different issues. So we took the opportunity to bring these federal resources, the GEARS money, and again, at the time when we booked the brought A&M in, we didn't know the color of money they were going to be using at that time, but we knew we had to do something to ensure a strong, robust fiscal foundation for Rhode Island College. And this was going to give us that opportunity because Governor Raimondo was ready, willing, and able, with a fact, data-driven set of information, make those smart investments at Rhode Island College. So we had to go get the information to find where the best place was to apply those resources to have the longest lasting result for the college.
I understand the general idea of doing that kind of an analysis. I just find that the timing is curious given the disruptions that have taken place on college campuses this year. Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Representative Speakman. Next on our list is Representative Carson, then back to Representative Casimiro, then back to Chairwoman Williams. Representative Carson?
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. My question is for Tim also. So Tim, my question is about the cancellation of the contract. So what I understand you said, and maybe I got it wrong, is that the preliminary draft working paper that you've shared with us was the final document you got from the consultants.
Yes, so on January 14th, I terminated the contract, so that was basically a pens down moment. They finished out whatever they had in front of them for that week of work or that immediate moment, and then it was kind of a pens down moment. It wasn't a, we'll fund you to wrap this up, or we'll fund you to go do these 3 more things. It was pens down.
Yeah, well, what concerns me about that, a couple things. First of all, you're saying that these folks and my colleagues have said that this consulting organization works for other parts of state government. And what concerns me is the cancellation aspect of the contract. I don't know what's in the contract. I don't know if you know it. But I would think that there should be some kind of a provision that if the contract is canceled, then the performing party still needs to like close things up. Not that they just put their pens down and walk out the door. So I'm just raising a question that we may not have an answer to in this room about what the contract looks like and what the cancellation aspect of the policy, of the contract looks like. Because I would think that there should be something that says, if it's canceled, then the performing party shall at least do A, B, and C, rather than it's canceled, they just leave. So I'm just flagging that, particularly since they seem to perform other services for the state. I would like to see that contract looked at for that aspect.
Thank you, Representative. That's a great put, and I'll take that under advice for future contracts in any manner across the higher ed system. That's a great put.
That is a great point, Representative Carson, and as you were speaking, I was sitting here thinking about Mr. Del Giudis's quickly terminating the contract when I and some other members of this committee made some noise about the cost. And I'm just wondering, Mr. Del Giudis, if you really had a lot of confidence in the deliverables that would come from finishing out this contract for another 3 or 4 weeks, if you really had a lot of confidence in it, I would have thought you'd pick up the phone, call somebody and say, wait, look, let me explain, let me talk to you. I mean, I'm easily available. I think most representatives in here are. I know that if I strongly have confidence and believe in something, I'm going to take it to the nth degree, and I'll go toe to toe with someone if I know I'm right. So it just, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh, and I don't mean to be. But if you had that amount of confidence in that you and the rest of the commission were doing the right thing, I frankly would have stuck with it. But that's just me.
Madam Chair, you're absolutely not being too harsh, and I totally understand your perspective, and I come from the same point of view. What I no longer had confidence in was that we were going to see a Governor Raimondo FY22 budget that we were going to smartly be able to influence with this information to make commitments and funding available to Rhode Island College. And I thought it would be unfair for me to try to approach Lieutenant Governor McKee and say, hey, look at this great idea I have, for all the reasons, frankly, that Representative Spellman just said, that the timing, and he's focused on waking up one morning and learning he's going to be governor in the middle of a global pandemic. He's got other things on his mind than for me as a volunteer running in saying, hey, I'm spending all this money to get this great report that I have great confidence in, but now I need confidence that you're going to act on it the way Governor Raimondo had committed to act on it. And that's where I lost confidence.
Well, I don't want to have an argument about semantics. It's getting too late for that. But a final report with some recommendations are certainly not any promise of delivering on the part of any branch of government, the legislature, the governor, but it's evidence that what you did has value, what this committee, what that A&M recommended has value, and then the decision, frankly, is out of your hands. So, but that's okay.
I just have a clarifying question for Mr. Del Giudis. Mr. Del Giudis, I'm sitting here listening to the conversation, and it like Joanne Broke-Eye Marblehead, that you spent CARES money on a contract for $76,000 a week. Is that correct?
So when we initiated the contract, I was not aware of what the source of funds were going to be. I just insisted that it not be funds that were available to Rhode Island College or to the commissioner's office at that point in time. So when we committed to it, I didn't know what the funds were going to be.
So during a pandemic, when people are facing food insecurity, facing paying their bills and not knowing where the money's coming from, and not paying their rent, and landlords not getting paid, you're spending $76,000 per week of CARES money, and doing it without hesitation.
So the Department of Administration used Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds to pay for this study at the higher education institution. Yes.
So children were going without, children with disabilities in particular, were going without services during the pandemic, but $76,000 a week did not bother you?
I don't understand the question.
So during the pandemic, everyone was suffering during this pandemic. Children with disabilities were going without services, but you thought it was okay to spend $76,000 per week on a consultant to tell you how to be more efficient.
Again, at the time that we engaged the consulting agreement, I was unaware of what type of funds that were going to be used, as long as, again, they did not use funds from Rhode Island College or from the Commissioner's office, because they were not budgeted for that. I later learned that the Department of Administration used the federally available emergency education relief funds to pay for it.
So where do you think the buck should stop?
I made the decision to engage the consultants, and I made the decision to cancel the consultants.
Thank you.
Representative Williams? Chairwoman Williams, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sitting here and still on fire from all that I'm hearing. Very disappointing, and I appreciate my colleagues for the questions that you articulated that I couldn't put it together. But what's still disheartening is the answers that we're getting, and I know it's privileged to say I don't understand the question, but it's neither here nor there. This is our first meeting, first oversight meeting. We have the authority to swear these people in to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And we forgot, because I don't believe that the majority of what was presented here in the time that I've been sitting here has been the truth. So if we can exercise it next time in plackets, because I think it'll be a waste of time right now, because they done said what they had to say, dressed up the windows, and just for our future reference, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth will be my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Williams. I always try to give everyone the benefit of telling the truth without having to be sworn into it. And I don't want to belabor any points, but again, I was sitting here thinking about the abrupt cancellation of the contract, Mr. Del Giudice, when you said earlier that it was imperative that we get this done as quickly as possible. And then I guess it became imperative that you pull the plug on it as quickly as possible. So you're kind of contradicting what you said in 1 minute with what you said the next minute. So the last thing I'd like you to speak about, just very, very briefly, last year we as a General Assembly removed the University of Rhode Island from the purview of the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and it now has its own Board of Governors. So very briefly, how do you perceive your role as different or the same as an independent Board of Governors that doesn't answer to your office? What would be different? Or is it the same? And should RIC have its own Board of Governors?
So thank you for that, Madam Chair. So if you may recall that when the URI Board of Trustees concept or bill was introduced, that legislation passed. At that point, we had the council had oversight of the 3 colleges, and I spoke as chair of the council in opposition to the creation of the board, not because I was opposed to them having a Board of Trustees, but because there was a lot of due diligence that was not performed in the process, and the process just moved too quickly. I was under, and still remain, I believe, that there is a strong need in a state our size to coordinate, to try to leverage the resources of one another, and to make the sum of the whole are stronger when the 3 parts are together and work better together. So I believe that there was a more of a coordinated effort to achieve higher education outcomes and results in the unified system. Not to say that we're not going to find our way with the new structure, we will, but it is not in the same governance or cohesive fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Del Giudice. Are there any other questions? Representative Noré.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I didn't want to go off track earlier when we were discussing the A&M. So regarding, excuse me, one of my concerns is strategic plans. As you stated earlier, the COVID response has delayed the strategic plan to, I believe, President Sanchez, that was his statement. And again, I understand that. But during all this downtime where COVID has kind of delayed everything, I would have thought that with school kind of being on hold a little bit, we would have been able to do a little bit of a better job in trying to organize our strategic plan and update our website. It appears that the strategic plan on the website has not been updated since October 23rd of 2018. And again, I understand it was a 20 plan, but we haven't updated a lot of the school's website since 2018. And I'll tell you, as a person who's going to be looking for college for his daughters pretty soon, I'd be a little bit concerned with looking over a website like this for a university and trying to send my kids there and realize that their information is 3 years old and they haven't done anything on their school website to track their progress. Additionally, in looking at that, I went through the learning innovation, the whole strategic plan, and again, the last thing that is listed there is 11 of your initiatives are still listed as not begun. So again, I can probably understand a little bit maybe why enrollment is down. I think people are maybe looking at things and not really seeing what they want to see there. And my last statement, more than a question, and you certainly can rebut my statements, is I also looked through your accreditations, and from what I found online versus what your webpage indicates, which again, last updated September of 2018, is that the Council on Accreditation on Nurse Anesthesia and Educational Programs, ANEST, has accredited the school, yet Rhode Island College does not list that as one of their academic accreditations. So again, if that's in fact the case, we're not doing a very good job of selling ourselves. And again, we'll go back to A&M. We don't need to hire somebody for $76,000. I could have told you that, and I'd gladly look it over for free.
No, thank you. If I could just respond, you're absolutely right. Anyone can look at the Rhode Island College website. It is without question, it is dated. I'm happy to tell you though, that we are actually transitioning to a brand new modernized website. I hope your daughter will take a look come May and June, as we'll be launching a completely new website. Content is being updated. One of the challenges of changing to a brand new website platform is that we have to stop, because of limited capacity, all the human resources are gearing up to launch the new website. The old website continues to be dated. And so that is exactly what is happening, but it is as a result of us actually transitioning to a completely new website. The other response I want to offer in terms of, COVID, certainly for college universities and certainly for colleges like Rhode Island College that has gone predominantly remote, there's a perception that there's not a lot happening at the college. And I got to tell you, that just couldn't be further from the truth. We still have to do extensive mitigation. There's still instruction, there's still challenges and issues. Of course, we've been working on the budget, addressing enrollment, implementing new technology, implementing a new website, staying engaged with our alum, transforming and modernizing the curriculum at the institution. So there is extensive work. In fact, I was at a retreat with our council just yesterday, and I shared with them that going through COVID, and while there has been some challenges, it probably has been among the most productive and I think successful years we've had at the institution in 5 years. You're absolutely right. When you go to the website and look at our progress report on our strategic plan, it does not highlight all the successes and accomplishments that we've made in the strategic plan. And one great example, of course, is the economic impact study. That was, getting finalized 9 months ago, nearly a year ago, but it simply was not a top priority for the institution as we're working very hard to keep our students safe, our faculty and staff, making sure mitigation was on point, addressing budgetary challenges, addressing enrollment issues, and trying to continue to move the institution forward. We will obviously update the strategic plan, and certainly now as we prepare a new strategic planning process, begin to finalize this last budget, this last planning process.
President,
Thank you for those comments.
Go ahead, Rep.
President, again, thank you, but your president's message in your page was updated just last month with a picture of the new governor. So again, you're staying on top of certain parts of the page, but the academia and the parts that are really important for the public aren't. And that was my point. Those are the things that are attracting students. And by looking at the webpage, again, we need to focus on what's in front of us, and again, still maintain the webpage as we're transitioning over to a new one. Again, everything has been done online for the last year except our webpage. That whether or not you're building a new one or you're not, we need to spend the time, because that is potentially what is costing us enrollment. I'm going to ask you one other quick question. Has your office been renovated at all in the last year?
So we had, during the COVID, we had a mold outbreak in my office as I was working here, and it simply was not sustainable to stay in here. They did have to look at the floor and repair it as it buckled and it came loose, and they found black mold underneath the floor. So yes, they did correct that problem in the office.
Understandable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Are there any last questions or final comments? Gentlemen on the screen, I appreciate your patience and for your agreeing to participate tonight. We'll certainly be looking forward to more and better great things from Rhode Island College. I've often felt that it's kind of like a red-headed stepchild in this state, and I certainly don't understand why. I have a lot of respect for that college, and I know you've served our students well, especially as you mentioned, first-generation kids attending college in their family. So I appreciate your work, Dr. Sanchez. Mr. Del Giudice, thank you for your agreeing to volunteer to be grilled like this for no pay. I give you a lot of credit for that. And yes, Dr. Sanchez, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity tonight. You know, there is, as a lot of folks have seen, some of the media out there certainly raising the question as to why Rhode Island College did this. I do have to take a moment just to quickly dispel the perception that Rhode Island College was somehow responsible for a contract with Albez and Marcel. And, you know, Rhode Island College, we certainly did not ask, we didn't request, we didn't seek engagement with A&M. We've been working very hard to keep our community safe, and frankly, and I think we'd all appreciate more conversations about policies that directly impact the success of our students, the graduation of our students, and how we move this state forward. And so I thank you so much for the opportunity to spend some time with you this evening.
You're very welcome, Dr. Sanchez, and I think most of us are aware that you didn't request it. We receive information as well. I've always said it's a small state. I do believe that there was another agenda afoot here, but I certainly am not going to go into that tonight. So, Dr. Sanchez, thank you very much. Mr. Del Giudice, thank you very much. Everyone else, thank you very much. With that, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. Chair Williams moves to adjourn. Representative Place seconds. Thank you, everyone. Good night.